What is going on, everyone? I'm Cucumber, and I want to sit down and talk with you guys today about the settlement system in Bethesda games. With the Skyrim DLC Hearthfire, the mechanic of building a homestead from the ground up was born for the more recent Bethesdaverse. Being quite limited with the extent of which the player could build or customize, it was definitely a staple that needed some polish. However, I do believe that, for what it was, the Hearthfire DLC was a welcome addition, and I very much enjoyed the whole aspect of gathering all these materials so I could build my very own home. The system was, if you wanted it to be, very personal, and required a sizable chunk of involvement and attention in terms of deciding what you wanted, then taking the time to search and gather to complete your home improvement. What was also a welcome side of the DLC was the fact that if one decided he'd rather use gold to furnish his house after the initial construction, all he had to do was go to his steward and wait for them to appear in his house. The house building in Skyrim, while riddled with flaws, had the right idea in trying to encompass both sides of the spectrum of players who either liked the building and those who really didn't. It even gave you the option to not even buy the plot of land for those who really didn't want to take part, so that was also nice to include. When it came to Fallout 4, Bethesda took this mechanic of house building to the next level, and that was the settlement system. Bethesda gave the player entire towns to build and renovate. You not only built your house, but everyone else's as well. This system came rife with improvements to Skyrim's Hearthfire, but at the same time, also with more flaws. Where more creative liberties were given to the player, Bethesda, for some reason, stripped the hands-off portion that Skyrim had. Where one was given more options on where to build, it came with a load of micromanagement. The settlement system in Fallout 4 was very much a give and take when it comes to both polish and mishaps. I can say that for me, I genuinely enjoyed the system. I like both Bethesda games and Minecraft, and when they were somewhat meshed together, I came to like building up Sanctuary as a bastion for the Minutemen. Until I found out you couldn't have more than 21 people when I prepped the town for around 50 to 60. Immersion officially ruined. But in all seriousness, I did spend hours gathering every pencil and coffee mug I could to take back home so I could build more and more. Although, on the other hand, things like the clipping issues or not being allowed a bird's eye view and literally being told that I have to do everything in my settlement that I wanted to establish, the system did have some bothersome gears that needed some oil. When it gets right down to it, I found that there were a few major flaws with Fallout 4's system that really bothered me. I first want to go over those, and then propose some possible solutions that could, in one way or another, improve or fix them with the future Bethesda titles. Because I do not believe that even after Fallout's many mistakes, that Bethesda would simply just drop the whole building aspect from their games. They've just spent too much time and effort to throw it in the trash when enough care can bring it into the spotlight as a staple for Bethesda RPGs. The first of many gaping flaws is the lack of hands-off involvement. In Skyrim, you had the option to either gather the materials to build the furnishings for your home, or purchase them wholesale with gold. The latter aspect gave a hand to those who either had a lot of money or didn't really enjoy all the gathering for mats, so they could be included, so they would have more of a reason to get involved with the DLC. In Fallout 4, that was completely stripped from the system in favor of micromanagement and forcing anyone who even just had a passing interest in the mechanic to go in, no hold bars. Even if one decided to buy all the junk needed to get the building started, it was all on the player to get anything actually built. It really put a damper on the idea of running a settlement. You're the leader. Why should you be doing all the heavy lifting when you literally have 20 other people sitting around banging hammers on the side of houses or just standing around? If only one of the major problems could be fixed, I would want the option to meet the game 50-50 in terms of overall involvement in the system. Secondly, this really took me by surprise when I first played, and that was the size of the system, and how much of the game was settlement management or even mentioned settlements. When I first heard of the whole settlement system, I initially believed that there would be maybe 4-5 settlements scattered across the map, and at these locations you would be able to make them really big, able to support like 50 people, and it would be really a townish area. But by the time I established my 30th settlement, I had lost all hope in trying to be a completionist for this system. In the very end, I found many of the settlements pointless, as they could have easily been just another raider camp or super mutant stronghold. There was no reason to have so many settlements within the Commonwealth, and would have been much more appreciated, at least by me, to only have a couple of settlements that you could spend a lot of time in each, rather than a little time in a lot of other places. Finally, I found the building mechanic itself to be quite fun, but equally frustrating. Discounting all the bugs such as the clipping not working at times, as they're things I can't provide solutions to, aspects such as being limited to what the player can see and reach, annoyed me to no end. There have been way too many times when I was so close to getting finished with the project, when it turns out I'm 2 feet too short, so I have to build a ladder or jump until I could get the wire through, or until the wall clips into place. Not only that, if a settler just so happens to walk near what you're currently building, nope, too bad, can't place the floorboards until Marcy gets a better attitude, it seems. Now, with all the flaws out of the way, let's get on with some solutions I've come up with. I want to preface this section by saying I'd like to take the perspective that we're trying to create a settlement system which the next major Bethesda RPG will be using. So for ease, let's say the system is designed for Elder Scrolls 6. Firstly, I would separate personal homes and settlements or towns from one another. I would also put a limit on how many places you could build, as the Elder Scrolls does not have that post-apocalyptic vibe that provides enough reason to allow the player to control and build up mass amounts of towns and settlements. I personally would not give the player more than 3 buildable homes, like in Skyrim, and only 1, maybe 2 settlements to work with and manage. I found that with both building and the issue of lacking a hands-off approach could be tackled at the same time with various ways one can involve himself in the building system as a whole. Getting the 2 extremes out of the way, I would include the options to both be integral throughout the entire process of gathering and building, like it is in Fallout 4 system, so no hold bars to what you can create in your own towns and homes as long as you have the materials, and the option to either not take part or use prefabricated buildings or homes like in Hearthfire. When it comes to the prefabbed buildings for the settlements and towns, I imagine something similar to those kingdom building mobile games that have you slowly building up your kingdom through making rudimentary forms of a smithy, a fishery, and armory, and then over time you would upgrade them. I thought that would be an interesting option to allow the player to have a little less involvement in the whole town building if he chose to delve into it at all. Now for the middle ground. Taking aspects of both hands-on and hands-off, I would make a sort of mode that allows you to have full range of motion and vision to provide free movement separate from the character's limits. You can then design what you want to build using either prefabricated assets like wings of a house, or placing every wall, floor, and roof to get it just right in your eyes. All this is done without actually using any materials, thus creating a sort of blueprint for the building you want in your settlement, or how you want your home to be made, the hands-on aspect. After that is complete, you can then assign people in your settlement, or hire construction for your home, to have it built over a period of time, and that's the hands-off aspect. You could take it one step further by allowing the player to either gather the materials or just use gold to continue the construction like in Hearthfire. This option would give the player the freedom of creative liberties while at the same time not forcing him to be there every step of the way. Now, having all these options open to the player may seem like overkill in the grand scheme of things. Having a mechanic fit for everyone for one system is a daunting task, especially when making something specifically aimed at a target audience would be easier to create and juggle, like in both Hearthfire and Fallout's case. Getting down to it, I wouldn't fault anyone for taking these suggestions with a grain of salt and not jumping straight into the deep end expecting all of these things to be implemented, regardless of how much I would appreciate this range of choices. Overall, these are just suggestions I've thrown up into the air, hoping something will catch them. Now, other than that, tell me what you guys think about the settlement system. Do you love it? Hate it? What would you do to improve it? And if you have any questions, quarrels, or queries, be sure to let me know. I'm Cucumber, and remember, pass the dressing.